to Ascend the Hill with Jeremy Austill. I'm Jonathan. This is Pastor Jeremy. How's it going?
It's going really well, except that I just had an eyelash in my eye.
You did?
Yeah, not an eyelash, attached in its appropriate place, but detached and on my eyeball moving around. And for some of you, that's not a big deal, but for me, that's the stuff of nightmares. Yeah. I'm squeamish about my eyes. I don't like touching them. Like when you see videos of somebody's eyeball up close, I cringe. It's like nails on the chalkboard.
Oh, man.
And so an eyelash touching my eyeball and me having to try to figure out how to get it out is like DEFCON 1 or 5, whichever one's the most serious. I don't know how the DEFCON system works,
man.
But so if I blink more than usual, I already blink a lot. If I blink more than usual on this video, you'll know, because that joker, I didn't get it out. It's done kind of resurface. So
man, no. Every time that happens to me, it always looks like I'm always aggressive trying to get it out. And probably too aggressive, so it always looks like I'm crying.
You're aggressive.
Yeah. I just like dig it out and try to.
My gosh.
Well, I can't do it. I can't last more than 5 seconds with it poking me in the eye. I'm like, I'm done. I have to. Or you're like blinking like crazy, and you look like you're going crazy. Well, other than that, how was the weekend? Other than the eyelash fiasco,
it was good. Yeah. It was a good weekend. I last week, as I mentioned on Sunday, preached in the Alabama youth camps. Had a great time. Preached a ton, and it's probably why my voice sounds a little crazy. I think I picked up some kind of little chest thing while I was there, which is what happens at camp. But it was physically tiring, but I went by myself. So whenever in years past when I would travel and preach and I'd go on an extended trip by myself, I just always looked at it as like I'm taking a trip with the Lord, and tried to make it meaningful from the standpoint of me communing with the Lord. So I really had a lot of margin to do that, because it wasn't like I was out there playing games with them and all those things, jumping on a blob and whatnot. I had a little room, spent a lot of time in that room praying, working, but came off of that tired, slept in Saturday real good, but spiritually it was so good for me. And that's why I chose to do it. When my friend asked me to come, he had somebody cancel, and he's like, "Man, I need somebody to help me." And I took a few days because I thought, "Man, do I have the margin for that now? Do I have the mental bandwidth for that? I don't know what's going to be happening in the church at that time. Like, do I?" But ultimately, Michelle and I just came to the conclusion: when I do stuff like this, it invigorates my spirit. It's good for the soul, so it'll make me a better pastor. So I'm going to do it. So it was very much that. And Sunday I was ready to preach. I wasn't preached out. I wasn't tired of preaching. I was stirred. And so, it was good. Yesterday was Monday, day off.
Yeah.
I grilled New York strips.
Oh.
Sauteed peppers, onions, mushrooms, grilled corn on the cob.
Yeah.
Corn on the cob is one of my favorite things to cook, to eat.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I do like a little butter bath with like some Cajun seasoning, salt and pepper, honey. Shout out to Duke Porter, one of our board members who has legit honey from his hives that he has given us generously. And so then you just take a brush and you like mop it on the corn.
So there's nothing healthy about the corn.
No.
Yeah.
And corn in and of itself is not exactly the most nutritious thing.
It's
filler. But it's a good filler.
Yeah, my favorite corn. I had it growing up, but it was this. We call it candy corn, but it was a sweet corn.
Okay,
My grandma would always grow it in her garden, but that was my favorite because it's sweet. Like it tastes good. Like even just by itself, it's pretty good. But smother it in butter, eat it off the cob, salt and pepper. Man.
Yes. So sweet corn, eat on the cob. Field corn is another that's not as sweet, not as flavorful. So you make cream corn with that. Anyway, I remember many a days like taking a spoon and running it down a corn cob to like get the cream out of the field corn so we can make cream corn. So anyway, I don't know how we got to talking about this. Yesterday was a good day.
Yeah, it was.
Today's a good day.
Yeah, and Sunday was a good day. And last week, actually, on the podcast, we had Pastor AT, Pastor Curtis, and they were talking about camp too. And real quick question, was it as hot in Alabama as it was at the Tennessee youth camp?
Yeah, I mean, it was hot.
Yeah, okay.
It was hot.
They had the one the one day when they came back, the heat index was 107 the day they came back.
Yeah, I spent many a days at Camp Jackson with it that hot, and it's tough.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So I found myself standing in the air conditioned concession stand helping a lot during those hot days. So.
Well, Sunday we were continuing our series summer playlist, and it was a interesting sermon because it was basically talking about reminiscing.
Yeah.
About everything that you've done in your past, whether reminiscing for you is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know, you know, depending on where your walk of life, if you look back and you see a lot of pain or you look back and you see a lot of joy.
Yes.
But it was a good Sunday. And I guess, you know, when we're talking about this, that Psalm specifically, you may have mentioned it, but kind of recap, what was the, like of all the Psalms, when was that like week number 3? What was about Psalm 126?
I like that psalm because of the historical context, because they make this statement about when we return from exile, what a dream. Just that sentence feels like the start of a good book.
Yeah.
You know, like the opening line of a good book. And because it feels full of information and context, and a story can be told from it. So I like that psalm for that reason. And the whole idea of remembering is precious to me. And I think you mentioned everybody has different life experiences. You know, every day of my life's not been peachy. I've not been perfect, but I have walked with the Lord basically my whole life. And so it's a 44, soon to be 45-year-long walk. And there is a lot of really precious history to me that I have. And so I like the idea. I mean, the first sermon I preached the weekend that we were elected, I talked about giving thanks, you know, for what the Lord had done. That gratitude, that remembering, sitting with the Lord and reminding yourself of what He's done is, I think, a core value of my spirituality.
Yeah.
For me, that has been a practice, a practical thing that I've done that keeps my affections on the Lord. It keeps your faith built. And there's just something beautiful. Again, that one line, you know, when the Lord brought us back from exile to Jerusalem, it was like a dream. Implies that it wasn't always like a dream, that there was pain, there was some difficulty along the way, but here we are now living in what God has done in our life. So I thought it was an encouraging, inspiring psalm, and then at the same time, I think you have that one strong, applicable nugget of remembering, thinking back, meditating on the Lord's goodness in your life.
Yeah. And when they were coming back from Babylon, what are the, I guess, the correlating books of the Bible that would kind of reveal that story of them? You know, the Psalm talk about them returning.
Ezra and Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Those are those rebuilding books. Haggai. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce his name. That's how I've always pronounced it. I haven't done the like YouTube pronunciation for that one, but that book of the Bible that talks about Zerubbabel and Shealtiel and what was happening. Those are, and then I alluded to Daniel, which is that exile book. Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or they were in exile, so you get a picture of what it looked like and what it felt like for them. So, yeah, those are probably the clearest Old Testament connections.
Yeah, and you know the Israelites were in exile because of their disobedience. It was a kind of a punishment, and so kind of bringing that to today, because the Psalm when we talked about it, it was like applying it to our lives today. Do you think that God does any type of that with us today?
Punishment?
Punishment in the sense of like, because of what you've done, you're gonna have a season of this, and then, or is that too much of a 1-to-1 comparison?
I would say it like this: when we do wrong, there are repercussions. whether they are God ordained or just what happens. Like when we make bad decisions, when we sin, there are consequences.
Mhm.
I think we would be, wise to not blame it on God when we do wrong, right?
Yeah.
So you have that layer, and then there are times when the Lord ultimately cares most about our heart
Mm.
being with Him, our devotions to Him, our affections to Him, our obedience to Him, because He knows He's what's best for us,
Yeah.
right? That's not this like controlling thing. It is He's God, He's what's best for us. And so He wants our heart to be in His direction. And so when our heart isn't,
Mhm.
or when our heart is governed by things that aren't Him, I think He allows difficulty, because the objective of the difficulty is to redirect our heart toward Him
Mhm.
so that we get back to the person that's best for us, the Lord.
Yeah.
And so I've experienced that. I've had seasons of my life where now in retrospect, I couldn't see it in the moment, but in retrospect, insecurity or pride, things like that had too much influence over me.
Mhm.
And I had to go through wilderness times to wake up to what I was allowing to lead me so that I could recalibrate and lean back into Him. So, yeah, I do think the Lord is involved in that. I think punitive is hard at this point because Jesus, took on
Mm.
sin. He took on all of uh, he took on um, the damage of sin, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so um, now I do like Scripture's clear, like wickedness gets punishment.
Yeah.
And wickedness, whether in this land of the living or in the final judgment, will receive punishment.
Mhm.
But for the believer, um, I don't think we are in the dispensation, if you will, of punishment. But God, in His mercy, and a lot of times it's hard to see it, but difficulty is God's greatest mercy,
Mm.
because His goal is to keep us from going down a path that is disastrous. So
Yeah.
difficulty will pull us, if we see it well and allow it, pull us out of that path back onto the right path. And so the more difficult seasons of my life, the more painful seasons of my life, I have now in the aftermath come to see as God's greatest mercy. It was through that He was actually fighting for my heart.
Mm.
He was fighting for me through what I was dealing with or going through. So I think, once again, what's your worldview?
Mhm.
What is at the center of who you are? What matters most to you? And for me, it is everything is through the prism of my relationship with the Lord, and with the understanding that that is the most important thing, not just to me, but to Him.
Yeah.
So He's going to contend for that, you know?
Yeah. And well, I guess it'd be kind of worrisome if you were going through difficulty and you didn't feel like it wasn't the case of you looking to the Lord, be like, "Oh, I probably need to look back to Him. I'm just gonna keep going."
Yeah.
It'd probably be more worrisome if your response wasn't, "Oh, I need to turn to the Lord. I just need. Oh, it's just a hard time. I'll get through it myself."
Yeah. I mean, I think you could go around the mountain a long time.
Hmm.
The Israelites went around the wilderness mountain 40 years.
Yep.
Some lessons take longer to learn than others.
Hmm.
And I don't think it, um, I think how long it lasts is often a matter of how long it takes us to wake up and come to our senses and get it and know where we need to turn.
Mm.
Now, all that said, there are times when difficulty hits and we're pointed to the Lord immediately because He is our source, He is our refuge.
Yeah.
But the difficulty keeps going. Okay, so what is the Lord doing in me in this? Like along the way, I'm saying, Lord, lift this, take this
Mhm.
off of
Yeah.
me, get me out of this, help me. And then this is the hard prayer. But Lord, I want out of this everything I need out of this
Mm.
to be who you need me to be and want me to be. So in your timing,
Mm.
like I'll endure. Like I'm gonna ask you to end it, but I still trust you.
Yeah.
You're sovereign. You know what you're doing.
Well, it's almost like the same prayer of, uh, if possible, take it from me,
Yeah.
but let your will be done at the end of the
Yes.
day.
Yeah. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Mm-hmm.
If it's possible, take this cup, let this cup pass from me, but nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Man, that line, nevertheless, that word, that's
Mm.
another word that is one of my like top 10 words in my faith. Nevertheless, like no matter like whatever's going on, nevertheless, it's me and you, Lord.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that brings me to like reminds me of Psalm 137 you mentioned in the sermon.
yeah,
Basically, it's like a snapshot of how they felt in the moment,
yes,
and it's pretty graphic too. Like when I was reading it, uh, when I saw your sermon notes, I think on Friday, I was reading through it. I was reading through that psalm, and I was like, okay. And then I got to the last line about the babies. I was like, oh, it went from like 50 to 100. Like it was
yes.
pretty intense, but it went to 100 real
I mean,
quick.
that last line was like
Yeah,
a shot.
yeah,
Yeah, that your babies. Yeah, go ahead and read it.
yeah. It's Psalm 137:9. Happy is the one who takes your babies and smashes them against the rocks.
Yeah, speaking of the Edomites and the Babylonians.
Yeah, which was I like even in the sermon. I mean, you prefaced it, but it was like they're like, "Oh, it's bad, but we want this too." And it's like, "Oh man, they were in a pretty rough spot."
They were in a dark
Yeah.
place, and so it's so fascinating with the Bible. And this is a way deeper theological, cultural conversation. But people can cherry pick the Bible to
Mm,
justify a lot.
yeah.
Somebody could cherry pick that and justify hating your enemies
Mhm.
instead of seeing this for what it is. This is an artistic expression of the soul. Like
Yeah.
this is what their soul felt. This is what they were going through. This was an emotional release, so
Yeah.
to speak. It is not an indicator that this is the right attitude
Mhm.
or the right spirit, right? And so you have to, like, reading the Bible. I mean, I've spent my whole life with it, and I still don't think I'm an expert in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But the more time you spend with it, the more it becomes this living, breathing, instead of here's a fact, here's a rule, here's a statement,
Yeah.
everything's black and white. It becomes this living, breathing thing. And you realize with the Psalms, they are artistic expressions of the soul.
Yeah.
And so they're letting you know right here, we are not feeling good. There is a
Mhm.
lot of bad in there. And and I think that's just honest and real.
Mhm.
And we have to accept that at times that is what people are feeling.
Mm.
Even the people of God, stuff is in them that is not good. Now you
Yeah.
can't live there. You can't set up a tent there.
Mhm.
But this is what's coming out of me right now.
Yeah.
And so I think even that psalm that is so intense and painful has a beauty to it because it's honest. And it's another reason that I like the Psalms. And I might have
Mhm.
referenced it at the beginning of the message. I can't remember. Is they are raw at
Mhm.
times. They're honest at times. And I would not suggest, saying in this statement publicly,
Yeah.
like if you're feeling some kind of way, happy is the one who dashes your babies against rocks. I would never suggest saying that publicly.
Yeah. No social posts.
And can we just acknowledge too that the writer of this psalm probably was not cognizant of the fact that we'd be reading it in 2023,
Yep.
and it would be canonized and a part of the Holy Bible. They just were writing and expressing. And so, but I do think it is necessary in your dialogue with the Lord to say what you mean and mean what you say.
Mm.
Like, just this is what I feel. And I say that from having spent a lot of time in my younger years almost trying to convince God that I was good
Mm.
and convince God that I was worth blessing. And so,
Mm.
you balance. I'm not mad, Lord. I'm just
Almost like
frustrated.
gaslighting
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so silly at times. If you're feeling that, something that intense, God, I'm feeling this. Help me.
Mm.
Like, this is what I'm feeling. Help me. Help me take these emotions that are difficult and could be hazardous, like help me bring them under sanctification, if you will. Help me get them submitted to you.
Yeah.
But when you say something that raw and that honest to the Lord, what you're doing is communing with God on a very deep level, on a very meaningful level, and a bond is being formed. A more a deeper union is being developed. And so yeah. I mean, the Bible's, I mean, people fight, they debate, they argue, they point and counterpoint. They use the Bible as a weapon. But ultimately, what the Bible is a revelation of God. And on that psalm, I would say the revelation is God knew they were in that state, yet he still found a way to redeem them. So,
well, and the Israelites, like through their history, like developed a way of reminiscing on things through festivals, through different dates that they had. And so what are there things that you do that are like ritualistic that keep to the front of your mind what we talked about in the sermon of those but God stories? Like, I went through this, but God did this. Are there things that you do? Are there ways that we could adopt that kind of mindset without it becoming a making it an idol?
sure.
You know.
One practice I do, and I don't do it as frequently as I did in an earlier season of my life, because we evolve and we, you kind of move on. But I still revisit this every so often, especially when I feel, when I don't feel like my affections at peak for the Lord. I'm just kind of doing the thing.
Yeah.
I'll sit down, and I might have shared this with the congregation at some point, but I'll sit down and in my prayer time, I'll go all the way back to the beginning. Thank the Lord for saving me when I was 5. Thank you for filling me when I was 12. Thank you for revealing to me the call to preach when I was 15. Thank you for that encounter I had when I was 18. Obviously, a little more slow and methodical than what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
And then I'll rewind again. Lord, I want to thank you for my mom who led me to the Lord and my grandmother who kept me in the house of God. I want to thank you for my dad because he was a good dad, and the things that there were traits in him, even when he didn't know the Lord, there were traits in him that you got through him into me that have helped me serve you well. Like you just start thanking him. Thank you for Karen Wheaton, who saw me in a crowd in the middle of 1,000 people and said, "There's something on your life. I want you to be a part of what we're doing." Thank you to Pastor Terry Bailey, who didn't know me, but sensed in his spirit I was the guy for the DYD role. So you just go through, and then I rewind. Thank you for Covington, my heritage, where I grew up and all that it meant. Covington Assembly, that precious church. Thank you for it. Thank you for my time at Central Bible College and for Calvary Temple, the church we attended that was in revival. And so I just go back and thank the Lord. I thank you, Lord, for when we planted the church, and it was a difficult season for us back when I was around 30 years old, and I was struggling, and I'd lost my confidence, and it was difficult. Thank you for walking in the park with me. I didn't even really feel you walking in the park with me, but you were walking in the park with me. Thank you. So like sometimes it's very intentional for me. Just go back and remember. And then other times, when we're in the middle of worship and we're singing a song of, I see the evidence, of your goodness all over my life. And I'm in my mind remembering, like I'm going back to those evidences, those things the Lord has done. So yeah, I think you have to be intentional about it on occasion. And then when you do remember something, when something comes up in your memory that the Lord has done, I think it is very appropriate to hit pause on whatever you're doing and thank the Lord for it. And to honor the Lord and to just sink into how significant that was in relation to where you are now. Yeah.
Well, and at the very end, in conjunction with talking about but God stories, you go into like growing seed and how seed takes time and he'll do it again. He'll grow things. And I feel like sometimes we understand that seed takes time, but at least in my mind, on occasion, I'll be like an all or nothing. Like either the seed's in the ground and I can't see anything or it's fully grown and we're there. What are some good ways that you found to measure growth in yourself with certain things instead of it being all or nothing. Either the seed's planted and I can't see anything, or it's fully grown. What's been that process?
I mean, this is such a cliche. Time reveals all things,
Mm,
and most of the time we can't see ourselves growing
hmm
in the daily incremental movement of time. We don't see it.
hmm
Part of the reason we've got to remember is because time gives context
mm,
and allows you to look back 5 years and realize how much differently you think of God now,
hmm
how much more steady certain parts of your heart are now. It it's I think I've talked about this on the podcast before. Um, we live with our kids every day, so their growth is is such a we see it happening. It's like watching grass grow,
Yeah.
you know. But then we take them to the grandparents, and they're almost shocked at how big they are
hmm
because the gap between seeing them. So a lot of times in our spirituality, we're watching the grass grow. We're
hmm
watching our kids grow, and we're having a hard time seeing it.
Yeah.
Um, like we don't really realize they've grown until the shoes hurt their foot, or that shirt is too short now.
Yeah.
So uh, we just have a hard time, I think, seeing growth in ourselves. Number one, most of us are probably our biggest critic.
hmm
We are very well versed in what we're not good in.
hmm
Now, there are certainly blind spots for all of us where we think we're doing okay, but the people around us are like, "You're not doing okay,"
Yeah.
But but I think in general, we have a harder time seeing growth in ourselves, which
mm
comes back to why there's a real value in the body of Christ
hmm
and having friends, brothers, and sisters that are watching us that can offer encouragement, that
hmm
can help us. No, you're doing better than you think. This is what you used to sound like. This is what you sound like now. I just come all the way back. We're going to start life groups again in August,
Yeah.
new trimester. We're going to do a big team push again.
hmm
It's really important to be in community
Yeah.
because the community helps you understand yourself
hmm
because you are interacting with people, and at times there's friction and you're learning more about yourself, and at times they're speaking a word into you saying, man, I see this and this is good, I'm proud of you in this area. So if you're listening and you're not on team or you're not in a life group, I really think you should prayerfully consider jumping in August um, because one of the values of the body is helping us have some context or some perspective on how we're growing and
Yeah.
where we're trending. And if we're trending not in a good way, the body of Christ can help us in that way too.
Yeah, and it does provide that encouragement that maybe you're needing in those where you're just kind of trudging through,
Yeah.
and someone can actually speak into your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're doing better than you realize.
Yeah.
And my guess is anybody that is serious about their faith and they're committed to the process of prayer, of the word, of working toward obedience, you're growing,
hmm
period.
Yeah.
It just it might not look like leaps and bounds to you, but I come back to time reveals all things. This thing with Jesus is eternal.
hmm
It's going to last forever. And so when I was younger, I looked for immediate, instant, clear, big change in my life.
hmm
I've come to realize, though, that change often is short lived. It's like the seed that falls, on the shallow soil and it can't take root.
Yeah.
No, the life change, like deep, meaningful life change, a lot of times takes 2 years, 5 years, 10 years,
hmm
and that's okay
Yeah.
because you're walking with the Lord in all of it, and with the Lord is the most important part. Even the growth and progress and that's not the point. The point is with the Lord.
hmm
If you are with the Lord, legitimately with the Lord in pursuit of him, you will automatically
Mm.
grow and be changed. So
Yeah.
even growth is not the goal.
Yeah.
In our growth-minded, better yourself,
Mm-hmm.
Self-improvement, saturated society, you have to rethink this spiritual life. This spiritual life is about being with the Lord, being present to the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing the Spirit of the Lord to do the work in me.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and to wrap up, there's something that you said Sunday in second service, talking about the but God portion of the sermon, and you said to call you Cheese Whiz, which
Cheese
was
Whiz, yeah. That came out of,
yeah.
I used to like some Cheese Whiz.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, the can when I was a kid, you take some Ritz crackers.
Oh yeah.
And you push that little white nozzle and that cheese just smoothly comes out. I used to think that was divine. Eat that with some Vienna sausages, and I was in heaven.
Yeah,
But I don't eat Cheese Whiz now.
I about to say probably have a lot more consequences for eating Cheese Whiz.
Yeah. I mean, when you're a kid, you can just decide to just straight.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't ate Cheese Whiz in a while. I don't even know if it would be good. I used to love Velveeta growing up, but then I kind of realized that's not cheese. I don't like Velveeta anymore. It's
really? Not even the whole classic Velveeta Rotel and sausage or anything?
No, I'd rather have cream cheese. But if you put a little Rotel in there, that's fine. But I'd rather have like cream cheese. But I just showed like I'm trending toward bougie.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'd love to hear your but God stories. They're not cheesy. So let us know in the comments some of your but God stories and things that he's done in your life. And remember to remember what he's done in your life. And make sure you hear it this Sunday, 8:30 or 10:30, or watch us online at csnlive.org. And it's going to be a great week. Thank you so much, Pastor Jim.
Thank you.